always part and parcel of Krishna. We're living entities, and we're always part and parcel of Krishna. Mamaivam sa jiva loka jiva bhuta sanatanan, 15.7. And our constitutional position is to be servant of Krishna. So if we refuse to serve Krishna, or if we forgot about Krishna, but still we're serving somebody, because that you can't stop that. That's the constitutional position of living entity. And we also take dictation from people. So we have husbands and wives and uncles and aunties, and we have CEOs and team leaders, and we have police and IRS and government people. They're all telling us what to do. And we're obliged to follow. So this is all related to our constitutional position as eternal servant of Krishna. So if we don't serve Krishna, we're going to serve someone else. We can't stop that. And if we don't have anyone to serve, we serve our own lust, anger, and greed. So all the Vedic literatures, therefore, are put into systematic order for the benefit of the fallen souls. And it is the duty of the fallen souls to take advantage of such literatures and be freed from the bondage of material existence. So, that bondage of material existence, this is our problem. And this problem is compounded by the fact that we don't want to be free of material existence. It's only when things are going really bad that we think, oh, you know, my life is a failure, this world is horrible, there's no real love or compassion. And you start becoming, feeling sorry for yourself, and maybe in extreme frustration one is willing to find out why I am suffering. But most people, they ignore all these signals that there's something seriously wrong. And they keep practicing different strategies to make this world a perfect place for their sense gratification. But ultimately, everyone is defeated by old age, disease, and death. So, as long as we have what's called hope against hope, we keep striving to find some situation where we can always be happy, always be peaceful, always be prosperous, always be successful. But it's not possible. And if we understand that by practical experience, or by what's called vicarious experience. Vicarious experience means you learn from others' examples, other people's example. And direct experience means you have to you experience yourself. There's birth, death, old age, and disease, and you realize that we're all destined to fail materially. So, therefore, the question is, why are we failing? It's because we have misconceptions about what life is. We think that life is all about sense gratification and material success and gaining money, and there's so many magazines that show the lives of famous people, movie stars, basketball players, football players, and so forth, and it looks glamorous. And so people buy those magazines and they dream that maybe one day I'll be like that. You know, of course, there's no hope, but anyway. So if they can't be like that, at least they can have a peek into other people's lives that are like that. That's why they buy those stupid magazines. They sort of vicariously experience what these other people are experiencing. So Vyasadeva systematically ordered the Vedic literatures for the benefit of fallen souls. So if you read Bhagavad Gita, it's systematically organized, right? In the beginning, there's a dilemma. Arjuna is not willing to fight, follow Krishna's order. But his saving grace is he surrenders to Krishna, wants him to be his guru, and now they give up pleasantries and polite talk, and they start talking seriously. So as soon as Arjuna accepts Krishna as his guru, then Krishna begins to instruct him by calling him basically a fool, because he's lamenting for something that's not worthy of being lamented, and so forth. And then Arjuna starts asking many questions, and they go through karma yoga, and then jnana yoga, and Astanga yoga, and they come to bhakti yoga by the end of the 6th chapter. And then from the 7th chapter to the 12th chapter, there's a very systematic and thorough expose of devotional service, what it is, and how it's the summum bonum of spiritual life. And then there's a lot of extra information from the 13th chapter to the 18th chapter. So it's a very systematic, very organized book, and it answers all our questions that may be stumbling blocks on our path back to Godhead. So this is a great thing that Vyasadeva did, right? He gave so much information, so many books, so many pastimes, so many histories and so forth, so that people can be enlightened. And he wrote different books for different classes of people. Okay? He didn't write just for an elite group of people. He wrote for all people, even the ones that are not hardly educated at all. Right? So, although formally Narada Rishi is Vyasadeva's guru, Srila Vyasadeva is not at all dependent on a spiritual master, because in essence he is the spiritual master of everyone else. But because he is doing the work of an acharya, he has taught us by his own conduct that one must have a spiritual master even though he be God himself. So you see, this defeats the Ritvik philosophy right there, that if Krishna in his incarnations as Vyasadeva, as Rama, Lord Ramachandra, as Lord Chaitanya, purposely gives the example of accepting a spiritual master for advancement of spiritual life, then whatever a great man does, common men follow, and whatever standards they establish become the standards of society. So this is Krishna consciousness in practice. If God himself is doing these things, that means it has utmost importance. And they're not saying, well, you know, as Vyasadeva, I don't want to accept Narada Muni. I'll accept Brahma as my guru. Or I'll accept this other one. You know, no, it's a bunch of nonsense. And therefore, in the 3rd chapter, even Krishna says a similar thing. He says, in 3rd chapter, 23rd verse, "For if I ever failed to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path." And Prabhupada writes, in order to keep the balance of social tranquility for progress in spiritual life, there are traditional family usages meant for every civilized man. Although such rules and regulations are for the conditioned souls and not Lord Krishna, because he descended to establish the principles of religion, he followed the prescribed rules. Otherwise, common men would follow in his footsteps, because he is the greatest authority. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is understood that Lord Krishna was performing all the religious duties at home and out of home as required of a householder. There you are. And then the next verse says, Krishna says, "If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, Varna Shankara is unwanted population which disturbs the peace of the general society. In order to check this social disturbance, there are prescribed rules and regulations by which the population can automatically become peaceful and organized for spiritual progress in life. When Lord Krishna descends, naturally he deals with such rules and regulations in order to maintain the prestige and necessity of such important performances. The Lord is the Father of all living entities, and if the living entities are misguided, indirectly the responsibility goes to the Lord. Therefore, whenever there is general disregard of regulative principles, the Lord himself descends and corrects the society. We should, however, note carefully that although we have to follow in the footsteps of the Lord, we still have to remember that we cannot imitate him. Following and imitating are not on the same level. We cannot imitate the Lord by lifting Govardhan Hill, as the Lord did in his childhood. It is impossible for any human being. We have to follow his instructions, but we may not imitate him at any time. Srimad Bhagavatam affirms, one should simply follow the instructions of the Lord and his empowered servants. Their instructions are all good for us, and any intelligent person will perform them as instructed. However, one should guard against trying to imitate their actions. One should not try to drink the ocean of poison in imitation of Lord Shiva. We should always consider the position of the Ishwaras, or those who can actually control the movements of the sun and moon, as superior. With such power, one cannot imitate the Ishwaras. Without such power, one cannot imitate the Ishwaras, who are super powerful. Lord Shiva drank poison to the extent of swallowing an ocean. But if any common man tries to drink even a fragment of such poison, he will be killed. There are many pseudo-devotees of Lord Shiva who want to indulge in smoking ganja, marijuana, and similar intoxicating drugs, forgetting that by so imitating the acts of Lord Shiva, they are calling death very near. So you notice, it doesn't say that Lord Shiva smokes marijuana. It only said that he drank an ocean of poison. But these modern junkies and dope addicts, whether they're in India or in the United States or Europe, they want to imitate Lord Shiva's drinking poison by taking poison in let's say, little cups or little quantity of it in the form of marijuana or heroin or cocaine or any of those drugs. There are many pseudo-devotees of Lord Shiva who want to indulge in smoking ganja, marijuana, and similar intoxicating drugs, forgetting that by so imitating the acts of Lord Shiva, they are calling death very near. Similarly, there are some pseudo-devotees of Lord Krishna who prefer to imitate the Lord in his Rasa Lila, or dance of love, forgetting their inability to lift Govardhan Hill. So first he lifted Govardhan Hill, then he danced in the Rasa Lila. So if anybody wants to imitate Krishna, first let them lift Govardhan Hill. It is best, therefore, that one not try to imitate the powerful, but simply follow their instructions. Nor should one try to occupy their posts without qualification. There are so many incarnations of God without the power of the Supreme Godhead. So Prabhupada is very eloquent. Yeah. And then, so, also in the Bhagavad Gita, a little bit later on, he says that he says, let me just find that verse. The third chapter, 21st verse. Yad yadacharati shestas tatat evataro kuru sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anavartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So, just to show you how devious some people are, Prabhupada explains in his purport that Lord Krishna himself, Lord Rama himself, and Lord Chaitanya all accepted Guru, right? And it wasn't, the previous Acharya, right? It was living Guru that they accepted. So if that's what they did, then how can they rationalize that you can take initiation posthumously that means after someone else has died? How can you take initiation from them? So, there's a lot of evidence here that there's a certain, we're supposed to follow our acharyas, and the Sampradaya Acharya, Lord Krishna or Lord Chaitanya or Vyasadeva, right, or Lord Rama, right, all these people have accepted initiation in a particular, specific way. So therefore, that's what we should follow, right? No matter how good one is in rationalizing this idea or that idea, that does not take precedence over precedent. What is precedent? That is, here as he says, but because he is doing the work of an acharya, he has taught us by his own conduct that one must have a spiritual master, even though he be God himself. Lord Shri Krishna, Lord Shri Rama, and Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all incarnations of Godhead, accepted formal spiritual masters, although by their transcendental nature they were cognizant of all knowledge. In order to direct people in general to the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna, he himself, in the incarnation of Vyasadeva, is delineating the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. So Vyasadeva accepted Narada Muni as a guru, right? He didn't say, "Oh, let me accept Brahma," or "Let me accept, Mahavishnu," or something, So this whole idea of the Ritvik philosophy is based on mundane logic and reason, but spiritual life is based on Mahajana Yenagata Sapanta, following the path chalked out by the great Mahajans. Prabhupada himself, he didn't say, "Oh, let me take initiation of Narottam Das Thakur," That's a bunch of nonsense, right? He took initiation from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, someone who he saw with his own eyes and who accepted him as a disciple and who, instructed him, personally. Okay, so you see, there are many places in the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita where the Ritvik philosophy is debunked. But, of course, there's such a thing as selective evidence. So the people who are too intelligent, they always weed out any evidence that debunks their speculation, and they only accept those things that seem to point to their point of view. So, therefore, they're going to ignore the fact that Krishna had a guru, ignore the fact that Lord Ramachandra had a guru, ignore the fact that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a guru, ignore the fact that Srila Vyasadeva had a guru, and they're all living gurus, so that is highly deceptive. Okay. Yeah.
Why do we only see that in Sanatana Dharma, we see this disciple succession and accepting the guru? But if you go out of the Sanatana Dharma, let's say Sikhism, Buddhism, Muslim religion, Christianity, we all see that the starting point, like Jesus Christ or Prophet Muhammad or Lord Buddha, we don't see those things in anything out of the Sanatana Dharma where disciple succession is followed that way.
Answer, they've all deviated. The answer is they have all deviated. They've all deviated from the right path of Sanatana Dharma. And the farther west you go, the more the deviation. So you go to Iran, there's the deviation, but it's not blatant, right? And you go to Turkey and Greece, there's a lot more deviation. You know? And you go to Europe, there's huge deviation. You go to the United States, it's an atomic bomb. Everything is broken. And you go to Japan, there's nearly nothing left, right? So, all Mayavadis and everything. So, you see, they've all deviated, Prabhu. That's the answer. And it's the obvious answer. This is the standard. Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita is the standard. And Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Jainism, Sikhism, Buddhism, they've all deviated to certain degrees. Now, that might not be palatable to hear, that might be hard to accept, but that's the truth. They can say whatever they want. Like, for example, in Christianity, there's a huge number of deviations. I'm preparing a book on it now. In Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, a huge deviation. First of all, they say you only live once. That's a bunch of nonsense. The soul is eternal. The soul is not going to die. They also say it's possible that the soul can die. Right. Number two, either they have no knowledge of who God is, what He looks like, what He likes, what He doesn't like, or they have wrong knowledge of who He is. Like the Catholics, they think God is an old man. That means He's subject to time. And so in Islam, they say you cannot make an image of God. Okay, fine, that's right. You cannot speculate. But that doesn't mean God doesn't have a form. So many Muslims say, no, you can't, because you can't imagine any form. That means He doesn't have a form. But no, that's not what it means. It means that you're not allowed to imagine a form of God. So you see, there's a lot of mistakes that are made. Like, for example, in all these three religions, it's okay to eat meat. That's a big no-no. And then all these religions, they have different concepts of what is and what isn't illicit sex. And then we can go down the line. There's many what you call mistakes in these religions. So they've all deviated to different degrees, some more, some less. Okay, so now text 23, right? 22, okay. Okay, 22 is a very famous verse. Idam hi pumsas tapasa shutasya va svitasya suktasya cha buddhi datayo avichuto rita kavibir nirupito yad uttama sloka gunanuvarnanam. Prabhupada quotes this verse often. Learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerities, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity, culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord, who is defined in choice poetry. Okay, so this is an important verse. Why? Well, we're going to find out now. But basically, it's saying that it's giving a map of, it's like a map. you want to go from point A to point B, all right. But there are many points in between that you have to pass, right? And in order to get to point B, you have to pass point, A1, and there's A2, A3, A4, A5, and you get to point B eventually. So here it's saying that the purpose of advancement of knowledge through austerities, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord. Now, there are many people who practice austerities but never culminate in the description of the transcendental descriptions of the Lord, or chanting of hymns, or charity, or all of these things. They do all of them, but they don't end up with chanting the glories of the Lord and descriptions of the Lord. So therefore, this tells you what is, it's called eschatology. It's a big word in English. It means, what is the finality of all these things, all these endeavors? Are they the endeavors by themselves, or are they stepping stones to a goal? So Prabhupada explains, human intellect is developed for advancement of learning in art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, economics, politics, etc. By culture of such knowledge, the human society can attain perfection of life. This perfection of life culminates in the realization of the Supreme Being, Vishnu. Well, see, again, he did that. There are all these different branches of knowledge, but they're all meant to lead to understanding Lord Vishnu. And if they don't lead to that, then they're just misleading. That you just wasted your time. The perfection of life culminates in the realization of the Supreme Being, Vishnu. The Shruti therefore directs that those who are actually advanced in learning should aspire for the service of Lord Vishnu. Unfortunately, persons who are enamored by the external beauty of Vishnu Maya do not understand that culmination of perfection or self-realization depends on Vishnu. Vishnu Maya means sense enjoyment, which is transient, meaning temporary, and miserable. Those who are entrapped by Vishnu Maya utilize advancement of knowledge for sense enjoyment. Sri Narada Muni has explained that all paraphernalia of the cosmic universe is but an emanation from the Lord, out of his different energies, because the Lord has set in motion by his inconceivable energy the actions and reactions of the created manifestation. They have come to be out of his energy, they rest on his energy, and after annihilation they merge into him. Nothing is therefore different from him, but at the same time the Lord is always different from them. So that's explanation of Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. So, is this being taught in schools? No. They completely factor out Krishna or God in all their teaching. They do it on purpose. They don't believe God exists, so why should they teach anything about God? See? Yeah, it's maybe an emotional crutch. That's what they use, that terminology, an emotional crutch for weak-minded people who are not intelligent enough to study more advanced topics like calculus and differential equations and quantum mechanics and all that stuff, So, therefore, they ridicule God and belief in that. And this is the whole basis of modern education. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written a wonderful poem where he blasts, he denigrates, he castigates, he declares that modern education is a scourge that's ruining people's lives. Because it doesn't end up in Vishnu or Krishna. It ends up with Maya as the goal of life. So Sri Narada has explained that all paraphernalia of the cosmic universe is but an emanation from the Lord out of his different energies, because the Lord has set in motion by his inconceivable energy the actions and reactions of the created manifestation. They have come to be out of his energy, they rest on his energy, and after annihilation they merge into him. Nothing is, therefore, different from him, but at the same time, the Lord is always different from them. So this is the famous black hole of the, what do you call it, theoretical physicists. There's no such thing as a black hole. There is such thing as Mahavishnu, though. So their concept of the black hole is another speculation. But if they only knew there was Mahavishnu, they could become transcendentalists. When advancement of knowledge is applied to the service of the Lord, the whole process becomes absolute. The personality of Godhead and his transcendental name, fame, glory, etc. are all non-different from him. Therefore, all the sages and devotees of the Lord have recommended that the subject matter of art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, and all other branches of knowledge should be wholly and solely applied in the service of the Lord. We don't say, we're not like the Muslims say, you're not allowed to sing and dance. That's haram in Islam. There was these 3 black girls that came to one of our festivals. It might have been a veg fest or another fest. And they said, oh, this music is not good. This is not allowed in Islam. And I said, yeah, it's haram. Oh, how do you know? I said, well, I know a little bit about Islam. So that's the whole point. They say, now, is it wrong or right? Well, even Plato said that actors, musicians, and people, novelists, and stars, movie stars, and said they're all low-class people. And this is 2,500 years ago. He said it. They're all low-class people. And they should not be considered as paradigms to follow in society. And he is right. Now, you look at all these magazines in the checkout counter, they're all about these movie stars, and it's all nonsense, their lives. They're all engaged in sense gratification, and they're trying to glorify it as if that's the goal of life. So it says here, when advancement of knowledge is applied in the service of the Lord, the whole process becomes absolute. The personality of Godhead and his transcendental name, fame, glory, etc., are all non-different from him. Therefore, all the sages and devotees of the Lord have recommended that the subject matter of art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, and all other branches of knowledge should be wholly and solely applied in the service of the Lord. Art, literature, poetry, painting, etc. may be used in glorifying the Lord. The fiction writers, poets, and celebrated literateurs are generally engaged in writing of sensuous topics. But if they turn towards the service of the Lord, they can describe the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Valmiki was a great poet, and similarly Vyasadeva is a great writer, and both of them have absolutely engaged themselves in delineating the transcendental activities of the Lord, and by doing so have become immortal. Similarly, science and philosophy also should be applied in the service of the Lord. There is no use presenting dry speculative theories for sense gratification. Philosophy and science should be engaged to establish the glory of the Lord. Advanced people are eager to understand the absolute truth through the medium of science and therefore a great scientist should endeavor to prove the existence of the Lord on a scientific basis. Similarly, philosophical speculations should be utilized to establish the supreme truth as sentient and all-powerful. Similarly, all other branches of knowledge should always be engaged in the service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also the same is affirmed. All knowledge not engaged in the service of the Lord is but nescience or ignorance. Real utilization of advanced knowledge is to establish the glories of the Lord, and that is the real import, or the real meaning. Scientific knowledge engaged in the service of the Lord and all similar activities are all factually Hari Kirtana, or glorification of the Lord. So this is a great, great purport and wonderful verse. And this was why Prabhupada started the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and why he wrote so many books and chose to translate and comment on the greatest books in the whole history of the universe: Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Nectar Devotion, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And also, Krishna consciousness is the means of using everything in the service of the Lord. We don't deny that everything can be used in the service of the Lord. We endorse it. But one must be in contact with an expert devotee to learn how to do that. An expert devotee knows how to use everything. So, in the second chapter, 63rd verse, in a purport, Prabhupada says, by development of Krishna consciousness, one can know that everything has its use in the service of the Lord. Those who are without knowledge of Krishna consciousness artificially try to avoid material objects, and as a result, although they desire liberation from material bondage, they do not attain to the perfect stage of renunciation. Their so-called renunciation is called falgu, or less important. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to use everything. Hey, he's repeating it twice in the same paragraph. Knows how to use everything in the service of the Lord. Therefore, he does not become a victim of material consciousness. For example, for an impersonalist, the Lord or the Absolute being impersonal cannot eat. Whereas an impersonalist tries to avoid good eatables, a devotee knows that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and that he eats all that is offered to him in devotion. So after offering good eatables to the Lord, the devotee takes the remnants called prasadam. Thus everything becomes spiritualized and there is no danger of a downfall. The devotee takes prasadam in Krishna consciousness, whereas the non-devotee rejects it as material. The impersonalist, therefore, cannot enjoy life due to his artificial renunciation, and for this reason, a slight agitation of the mind pulls him down again into the pool of material existence. It is said that such a soul, even though rising up to the point of liberation, falls down again due to his not having support in devotional service. So, the ability to use, and the knowledge by which one can use everything in the service of the Lord is exactly what Krishna consciousness is all about. But to be able to use everything in the service of the Lord, you have to have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. Some people say, "Oh, you can't use everything in the service of the Lord. How can you use marijuana in the service of the Lord?" Well, no, you can. You can use the fibers from the marijuana plant to make clothing and paper. You don't have to smoke it or eat it and get intoxicated, but it does make clothing. I mean, the first American flag made by Betsy Ross was made out of hemp. So hemp is a marijuana cousin, let's put it. And it can be used for making paper, it can be used for making cloth. Right? So, if you want to use the same thing for intoxication, that's different. But we can only offer those things that Krishna accepts. Okay. So Prabhupada ends that purport by saying, all knowledge not engaged in the service of the Lord is but ignorance. Real utilization of advanced knowledge is to establish the glories of the Lord, and that is the real importance. Once Prabhupada said that we don't have to prove that Krishna is God. Let the atheist prove that he's not God. Yeah. They have no. First of all, they don't even know what God is. So how are they going to prove that he's not God? Right. But he was right. We don't have to prove anything. Let them prove that he's not God. Well, what he's saying basically is, look, you write the book, scientific information, how Krishna is God. And if you read this next book that's going to come out that I've written, in that we explain the proof that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the source of, and we define what that means, what it means to be God. First of all, he's the source of everything. Secondly, he's the most prominent, eternal, living being. And he has a unique position of maintaining all their living entities. And third, he's present in the heart of all living entities as super soul, and therefore he's cognizant of all bodies and everything. He's also present in every atom. Number 4, he's transcendental all the modes of nature, and he's completely independent of the modes. Number 5, no work affects Krishna, and he's not attached to the fruits of work, and he's never entangled by the reactions of work. Number 6, he has mutually contradictory qualities. He is one, but can also expand himself into many. He has no material legs, but he can run faster than anyone. He is far, far away, but very near also. These are called mutually contradictory qualities. No one can emulate that. And he possesses all opulences. Sad Aishwarya Purnam. He's full of the 6 opulences: riches, fame, beauty, power, knowledge, and renunciation. And he also is master of all the yoga cities. Anima, Lagima, Mahima, Prapti, Prakamya, and Isitva, Vasita, and Kamavasayita. These are 8 mystical opulences. And also, he is perfect and complete, even though he emanates infinite unities that are perfect and complete, and he always remains perfect and complete. And he's the support of everything else that's perfect and complete. Number 10, he mystifies everyone. Such as Narada Muni visited Krishna in Dwarka, and he was mystified because he saw that he had over 16,000 wives, and each one had their own palace made with jewels and all expensive things. And in each house, he had 10 children with his wives, all these different wives, and he was doing different things simultaneously in each house with the different wives. Narada Muni was mystified. He never saw anything like that before. And then Brahma was mystified. Indra was mystified. Shiva was mystified. Right? So that absolute power of mystifying even the greatest personalities in the universe. It's another proof of Krishna's unique position. So these are some of the, qualities of the Lord. Okay. All right. So, any questions? So when you present who Krishna is scientifically, let him prove that he's not God then. You say, they don't know what God is in the first place. Okay, well, we can explain it to them. Then let them prove he's not God. They would not be able to do it if they see all this documented information. Okay, so any questions? Otherwise, we'll go to the next verse, 23. Aham puratita bhave bhavam mune dasyas tu kasyas chana vedavadinam nirupito balaka eva yoginam susursane pravrishi nirviviksatam. So this says, O Muni, in the last millennium I was born as the son of a certain maidservant engaged in the service of Brahmanas who were following the principles of Vedanta. When they were living together during the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their personal service. And Narada Muni now is explaining his previous birth and how he became Narada Muni, the greatest sage in the history of the world. So, maybe someone can read, someone who wants to read. Purport. Oh, wait a minute, here, take this mic. That one. Is that on? Is that one on? Does it work? Okay.
The wonder of an atmosphere surcharged with devotion service to the Lord is briefly described herein by Sri Narada Muni. He was the son of the most insignificant parentage. He was not properly educated. Still, because his complete energy was engaged in the service of the Lord, he became an immortal sage. Such is the powerful action of devotional service.
So did he go to school?
No.
Did he have any degrees?
No.
Was he rich?
No.
Let's see, was he... did he do yoga asanas?
No.
No. He didn't do any of that stuff. He just chanted Hare Krishna and took the remnants of saintly persons and listened to their discourses, and he became the greatest sage in the history of the world. He's still alive. He's still preaching somewhere in the universe. So you see, this whole idea, my kid has to go to school, he's got to do this, got to do that, it's actually not necessary. Of course, most people wouldn't accept that, but it's a fact. You don't have to go to school to get an education. In fact, many kids in the United States get dumbed down by going to school. You know, there's a national, let's say, a national scandal that, especially inner city schools, they don't educate the kids. They graduate and they can't even pass a third grade test. They don't even know how to read. They graduate without knowing how to read. And believe me, a lot of kids are like that. If you go to the inner city schools, they learn all kinds of nonsense things. They play games all the time. They don't do their homework. And they don't even know how to read. They don't even know how to read. Okay, then there are better schools, and there are more advanced schools. I went to an advanced public school, a very famous one in Philadelphia. But, and many of the people that have graduated from that school are all prominent people today in the United States. But that doesn't mean they're educated, because according to the previous verse, all the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerities, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity, culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord. And then, so Prabhupada says that the advancement of learning in art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, economics, politics, etc., is what? It should terminate in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord. And if it doesn't, that is considered a waste of time. And that's the verse that he's quoted in his second chapter of the bhagavatam. Dharma swanustitak pumsa visvaksena katasuya napadaya yadiratim shrama eva hi kevalam. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. They're considered useless labor. Second chapter, 8th verse, Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada says, to the gross materialist, Jai Shri Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. To the gross materialist who cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, there is nothing beyond the senses. Therefore, his occupational activities are limited to concentrated and extended selfishness. Concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body. This is generally seen amongst the lower animals. Extended selfishness is manifested in human society and centers around the family, society, community, nation, and world with a view to gross bodily comfort. Above these gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft on the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness, limited to the body and the mind. But above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. That means if you die, all the things you achieved are zero. But less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul. Because foolish people have no information of the soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind, they are not satisfied in the performance of their occupational duties. The question of the satisfaction of self is raised herein. The self is beyond the gross body and subtle mind. He is the potent active principle of the body and mind. Without knowing the need of the dormant soul, one cannot be happy simply with emolument of the body and mind. So emolument means, you put on nice perfumes and soaps and talcum powder and clothes and jewelry and cars and yachts and houses and so forth. Those are all emoluments, things that bedeck the body. Right? So Prabhupada is very eloquent here. He's waxing eloquence. He's increasing eloquence. So he says, above those gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft in the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness limited to the body and the mind. But above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. But less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul. Because foolish people have no information of soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind, they are not satisfied in the performance of their occupational duties. The question of the satisfaction of self is raised herein. The self is beyond the gross body and subtle mind. He is the potent active principle of the body and mind. Without knowing the need of the dormant soul, one cannot be happy simply with emolument of the body and mind. The body and the mind are but superfluous outer coverings of the spirit soul. The spirit soul's needs must be fulfilled. Simply by cleansing the cage of the bird, one does not satisfy the bird. One must actually know the needs of the bird himself. The need of the spirit soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. He wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. He wants to see the free light and the spirit. That complete freedom is achieved when he meets the complete spirit, the personality of Godhead. There is a dormant affection for God within everyone. Spiritual existence is manifested through the gross body and mind in the form of a perverted affection for gross and subtle matter. Therefore, we have to engage ourselves in the occupational engagements that will evoke our divine consciousness. This is possible only by hearing and chanting the divine activities of the Supreme Lord, and any occupational activity which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead is said in here to be simply a waste of time. This is because other occupational duties, whatever ism they may belong to, cannot give liberation to the soul. Even the activities of the salvationists are considered to be useless because of their failure to pick up the fountainhead of all liberties. The gross materialist can practically see that his material gain is limited only to time and space, either in this world or in the other. Even if he goes up to the Swargaloka, he will find no permanent abode for his hankering soul. The hankering soul must be satisfied by the perfect scientific process of perfect devotional service. So this is a great purport. Basically, if you don't achieve Krishna consciousness in your life, then everything you did was a waste of time and energy. And it's all for naught, as they say. It all ends up zero. And there's a famous poem by Lord Byron called Ozymandias. I don't know if you ever read it. Ozymandias was a very powerful, great king in ancient Egypt. And Byron writes that, while walking in the desert somewhere in Egypt, he comes across a broken down monument to the greatest king of the world, Ozymandias. So it's in the middle of a desert where there's nothing, and it's broken also, right? But, he can still see the inscription, the greatest king in the world, Ozymandias, right? So that's what it means. You can be the greatest king in the world and be a total failure, right? Because you're not Krishna conscious. You missed the actual essence of life. Okay, so any questions about this? Did we finish the purport? No.
No.
Go ahead.
Still
Keep going.
Should I read?
Yeah.
The living entities are the marginal energy of the Lord, and therefore they are meant for being properly utilized in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. When this is not done, one's situation is called Maya. Therefore, the illusion of Maya is at once dissipated as soon as one's full energy is converted in the service of the Lord instead of in the sense enjoyment. From the personal example of Sri Narada Muni in his previous birth, it is clear that the service of the Lord begins with the service of the Lord's bona fide servants. The Lord says that the service of his servants is greater than his personal service. Service of the devotee is more valuable than the service of the Lord. One should therefore choose a bona fide servant of the Lord, constantly engaged in his service, accept such a servant as the spiritual master, and engage himself in the spiritual master's service. Such a spiritual master is the transparent medium by which to visualize the Lord, who is beyond the conception of the material senses. By service of the bona fide spiritual master, the Lord consents to reveal himself in proportion to the service rendered. Utilization of the human energy in the service of the Lord is the progressive path of salvation. The whole cosmic creation becomes at once identical with the Lord as soon as the service in relation with the Lord is rendered under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. The expert spiritual master knows the art of utilizing everything to glorify the Lord, and therefore, under his guidance, this whole world can be turned into spiritual abode by the divine grace of Lord's servant.
Haribo.
All glories to the spiritual masters.
Huh?
All glories to the spiritual masters.
Yeah, all goes to Srila Prabhupada and his purports. So he says that living entities are meant for being properly, he says that living entities are meant for being properly utilized in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. When this is not done, one's situation is called Maya. Therefore, the illusion of Maya is at once dissipated as soon as one's full energy is converted in the service of the Lord instead of in sense enjoyment. So here, that's the dividing line. That's, what do you call that? What's that dividing line between North Korea and South Korea? It has a name, I forget. Yeah, so this is the dividing line between Maya and Krishna consciousness, right? It's when you use your full energy
In the service of
the service of the Lord. As one's full energy is converted in the service of the Lord instead of in sense enjoyment. So then the illusion of Maya is completely dissipated, completely erased. And Narada Muni is a personal example. Okay, so now, how does this all translate into practical life? That's the question. Well, that's why there are spiritual masters, because they're supposed to be able to advise people how to gradually reorient their life to being fully engaged in the service of the Lord. And Prabhupada clearly says, especially in his early lectures in 1966, he clearly said that nowhere did Krishna tell Arjuna, stop working. Never said that. He never implied it, that you should stop working. On the other hand, he said, you must.
use all your energy.
You must work. You must do everything. But it should be directed toward pleasing the Lord. So there's no question of, giving up work and just sitting in one place and meditating and with your mouth open and praying that someone will drop something in your mouth so you can eat. That's not. We're not doing avadut yoga. We're doing bhakti yoga. It's different. Avadut yoga, you just sit it there with your mouth open. If someone drops something, and you eat. And if no one drops anything, you starve. This is not avadut yoga. And therefore, we need to have advice how to practically orient our life toward using everything in the service of the Lord without becoming a lazy renunciate. We're not into lazy renunciation. We're into active devotional service. Okay, so when this is done, one's situation therefore the illusion of Maya is at once dissipated as soon as one's full energy is converted in the service of the Lord instead of in sense enjoyment. So most people can't make that switch. Most people are too addicted to sense enjoyment. And therefore they can't switch to using the senses in the service of Krishna. But through association with devotees, through regular hearing and chanting, through practical devotional service, one gets a higher taste. Nahami krama nastosti, pratijayana vidyate, swapam api asya dharmasya, chayate mahato bayat. That's second chapter, 40th. No, it's not 40th verse. Second chapter. Abhikromanastosi pratijayana vidyate swapam apyasya dharmasya chayate mahato bayat. Param jistva nivartate. Where's that verse? Huh?
259.
Second chapter, what?
259.
Yeah, 259. Okay, yeah, I was almost there. I was on 260. Yeah, 259, yeah.
No, 240.
No, that's not the verse.
240.
Yeah, okay, 240. Yeah, I'm sorry. So, in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one. No, that's not it. Param Dristva Nivartate. Where's that? Oh, yeah. Vishaya Vinivartante, second chapter, 59th verse. Okay. Niraharasya Dehina, Rasarajam Rasapyasya, Param Dristva Nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So Prabhupada says, unless one is transcendentally situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Astanga Yoga, in the matter of Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and says etc. There's only one more after that. That's Samadhi. I don't know why they could have mentioned Samadhi also. Is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness, no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life, but such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. So that's what's meant by param dristva nivartate. In other words, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So unless we get that higher taste, we'll remain always on a, let's say, on a, there will always be the possibility for a fall down, unless we get the higher taste. What is the higher taste? Higher taste is Anandamaya Bhyasat, transcendental ecstasy from purely chanting the holy name associating with nice devotees, and doing enthusiastic, intelligent things for Krishna, and chanting, and following the regulative principles and so forth. So, but we should get to the point where we do enthusiastic, intelligent things that are creative and very exciting, because it's based on spreading Krishna consciousness. Then we get this higher taste. It's one thing, following rules and regulations, waking up early in the morning, all that, but if it doesn't lead to this higher taste, then those things are done begrudgingly. But when you have the higher taste, you get enthusiastic. You can't wait to do these things. See? Just like Prabhupada gives the example of Napoleon. He was so excited conquering that he would only sleep 2 hours a night. He had 20, 30 secretaries, and he'd be surrounded by them, even very early in the morning, and he'd be giving them order, send this message to our troops in Germany, and we're going to build this hospital, and then we're going to do this. I mean, he was managing a huge empire, right? Through all these secretaries, and they were all running around, and they were doing these big things, and they were conquering people and looting them, and so many things he did. He wasn't Krishna conscious, but he was excited. He got this taste for doing, big things. So we can get a taste also, not like Napoleon for conquering people, but for spreading Krishna consciousness. And it's exciting. And maintaining temples and spreading the message of Krishna. So unless we get that higher taste, our situation is very shaky. We can fall down at any time. But once you get the higher taste,
nothing can stop.
And you're regularly hearing and chanting and so forth, and following the rules and regulation, you become kutastha. You know what kutastha means? It means like fixed.
Fixed up.
Yeah, unmovable. You're not going to be shaken by anything. All right. So this is the real purpose of all this activity that we're doing, festivals and different preaching programs and classes and discover yourself and bhakti riksha, this thing, that thing. It's to build up the enthusiasm and the knowledge by which we can use everything in the service of Krishna. Okay, so are there any questions?
So how do the devotees get such enthusiasm, Maharaj?
How do you get this enthusiasm?
Yeah.
Well, you have to have ever-increasing goals to achieve. It has to always be, as a very famous letter Prabhupada wrote, maybe I can find it. I'm sure I can find it. I have his letters, where he talks about how Krishna consciousness, in Krishna consciousness, there should always be there should be inspiration on a regular basis. The devotees should be inspired on a regular basis, and have exponentially increasing goals, exciting goals to achieve. In other words, as soon as you achieve one threshold of a goal, and then you're ready for the next one, right? And in that way, you don't become lax and negligent. See, people fall down because of negligence. But if every minute there's a new challenge, or if there's an ongoing challenge that takes long time to achieve, but one is determined to achieve it, then they remain fixed in devotional service. So we have to always push ourselves a little bit more to do more in Krishna consciousness and get better at doing what we're doing, and then to increase. We don't realize what our potential is. What is our potential? Well, our potential is that we can even control the sun. How do we know that? Well, Vivaswan, he's a jiva, like us, but he's able to control the sun. And therefore, we don't realize what the human potential is. It's not something mediocre. It's something grand and wonderful. But the way to achieve it is through Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So we should be inspired all the time. There's got to be, very inspiring projects, and one should not only be inspired, but allocate time and energy to achieve those ever-increasing goals. When there's a certain number of devotees that cooperate and work together and encourage each other, then you start doing bigger and bigger things, and they're exciting. Look at Napoleon. He was so excited. He only slept 2 hours a night, right? And he was really into it, He didn't want to do anything else. He just wanted to keep conquering, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'll get that letter. I'll read it next week. It's a wonderful letter. Prabhupada says that the devotees should always be inspired, and the leaders have to do things that inspire the devotees so that they go from one success to the next, and it's all full of nectar, and it's sweet, and everyone's helping each other, and you suddenly do miraculous things, and people notice it. Okay, so we'll stop right there on verse 24, right? Yes.
After any precedent where Prabhupada asked his disciple to initiate somebody on his behalf?
Yeah. He appointed 11 people to initiate on his behalf.
So that is what I was told, that is some of the people who use that as a thing that Prabhupada asked, that you can initiate my behalf, so we can, even though Prabhupada is not present in this world, we can initiate on his behalf. So that argument I've heard from others.
It's only because he was incapacitated, or he was sick, or he was not able to, physically do what he did before because of his, health. But that's not the Ritvik philosophy. It's not what you call posthumous initiation. He was still present. He was still accepting those people as his disciples. I mean, there are many examples. I mean, I can start pulling out all the quotes if you want, where he says, he wants everyone of his disciples to be a guru. And they will have disciples on their own right. He says it clearly. And what we just read here, there are many, many places where he indicates that this is called disciplic succession. Nowhere in Vaishnavism is there a posthumous initiation. And by the way, if there is one example of it, that example doesn't change the rule. An exception doesn't change the rule. There are maybe one or two exceptions, but that doesn't change the rule. And Prabhupada says, what is the law of disciplic succession? It's in a letter. I'll pull out all those quotes if you want, and you can see it. The fact that he appointed certain of his disciples to initiate on his behalf, that's not establishing a Ritvik system. That's simply due to time and circumstance and his state of health. He chose to do that for a certain period of time. You know? But he definitely wanted his disciples to become gurus.
Consciously accepted those disciples and just asked his disciples to just
Perform the ceremony.
ceremony.
Yeah. Yeah. Nowhere in the history of Vaishnavism has anything been done like that. What the Ritviks are purporting. Never. It never happened before. And if there were some exceptions, the exceptions don't change the rule. They are what you call extraordinary exceptions. Like, for example, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took sannyas from the picture of his guru after his guru had passed away. But I mean, those are extraordinary exceptions. You know, that's not the way to continue the disciplic succession. Okay, Hari Bol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Allyship.
What?
It's a new buzzword which is going around in the corporate sector. It's called allyship.
Allyship. You mean you're getting allies?
Yeah, so it's ALLYSHIP, and so Microsoft